So could we talk a bit about the language we should use when discussing eating disorders and like what we should say?
When I am running a group or even speaking on platforms, I try to stick to a couple of rules. No numbers. So no hours exercised, no calories eaten, no frequency of purges, no years in recovery, no years in active eating disorder. So staying away from numbers just because we do know about the competitive nature of eating disorders. Okay. No methods. So just because, as you shared, tips and tricks.
Right.
We don't want it to be anything specific that someone else can learn. So no methods. And then sometimes I do no specific eating disorder just because we know that there's that hierarchical nature of eating disorders.
Oh, wow.
So we just say, this is my ED story, and we try to stay away from specifics regarding it. And anytime that they want to add a method or a specific label, we just use the term my eating disorder behavior. I struggle with this daily because with eating disorders, I would love if we could have a world that was free of potential triggers. And part of my work as advocacy is to make the world a safer place for people with eating disorders. And then part of my work as a clinician is how to help people cope when they do have triggers, because what's triggering for one person might not be triggering for another person. I would love there to be a world without any sort of trigger for an eating disorder or pejorative language around body weight, shape, and size. That will never be the case. We can fight, we can advocate, we could do our best, we can make the world a safer place, but it won't always be a safe place for people with eating disorders. Language is really, really important, as is learning how to be resilient when we do feel triggered by something.
Do you feel that the boundaries that are really important in there are sometimes so restrictive for you as a clinician when you are running a group or dealing with a situation? And what would be an example of that?
Group and individual is different. In my individual, we are getting into the nitty-gritty. And then our group, just gently reminding people of the rules, making their own rules for the space so they feel like they have autonomy and agency over what the space feels like.
Right.
And recognizing that we're all going to mess up at some point, and that's okay.
Right.
And just saying, oh, hey, gentle reminder. And then what I like to do is have other group members also enforce the rules too.
Right.
So I don't always look like the person who's policing everything.
Part of me always believes that if I put my dirty laundry out on the front lawn, it no longer looks dirty. And trust me, I understand by learning tricks and trait of the trait. You know, like I got that. But then there's the other part of me that's like, if I knew, like we had talked about, if I had known that others were engaging in this and what they were doing, at some point, that might have been a healing space for me.
There is something so beautiful about everyone talking about whatever they've got going on under the surface. And also place and time is so appropriate.
Right.
Maybe hearing that from someone would have been too much to hear at that time.
Right.
So that's why asking permission to have these conversations can be really healing and really helpful in navigating these sticky waters of what's okay for you might not be okay for me. And then it's my job. If it's not okay for me, it's my job to establish the boundary.
Yeah, that's, I mean, honestly, like even now, you know, to self-advocate, to say, this makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm delayed in it.
Totally. So let's take before. And I do this a lot in my own therapy, like when I'm giving therapy, modeling how to navigate these situations. So before we were talking about a conversation that I was uncomfortable with. And I said that. I said, hey, I'm uncomfortable with this conversation. And we learned how, because you respect me and you respect my boundaries, we learned how to have the conversation in a way that felt best for both of us.
Right.
So that takes practice in one, knowing that your boundaries are being violated, and then two, being able to vocalize and communicate it.
One thing I have recently learned, which was kind of like hard for me to absorb, is that even though if you advocate for yourself,
They might not do it.
they might not do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, but wait, I'm advocating for myself. Why aren't they doing it? But there is that sometimes, you try to set a boundary and it's not respected and it's not heard. And, you have to deal with the fact that when you set a boundary, it's not always going to be,
Exactly. We make boundaries. So if I'm having a problem with something and I make a boundary so I know how to act. If hopefully you respect me enough to honor my boundaries and work within my capabilities. If you choose not to, I say, great, I know you're someone that doesn't respect my boundaries. I'm going to leave the situation. It's not to get you to change. It's just for you to know where I stand.
It's to protect you.
It's my conditions.
It's for you. You're setting a firm boundary by removing yourself. Not to teach a lesson, but to protect yourself. And that's something that for me, I struggle with.
Yeah.
And having a conversation like this actually really is very empowering.
Yeah. If you don't want to respect my boundaries, that is totally okay. I'm going to leave the situation then. Right. Yeah. It's a hard one. And that being said, like when we're in the group space, going back to your original question, those are the boundaries of the group. It's there for a reason. You have full choice to be in this group or not. If you feel like you can't honor the conditions of the group, that is okay. This is not the space for you.
So the language sets the boundaries.
The language sets the boundaries.